There comes a time in every life when a single thought separates the dreamers from the doers, the talkers from the builders, the ordinary from the unstoppable. The world you live in today, the technology in your hands, the roads you travel, the cities that never sleep, all began inside the mind of someone who refused to think small. Every skyscraper was once a sketch. Every masterpiece was once a vision. Every revolution began as one quiet idea in the heart of a determined mind. Think of Elon Musk, a man who dared to believe that we could live among the stars while others laughed at his audacity. Think of Oprah Winfrey, who turned pain into purpose and rose from rejection to reign over an empire of inspiration. Think of Thomas Edison, who failed 1,000 times, but saw each failure as another step toward the light that would brighten the world. Think of Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school team, but turned that humiliation into fuel for greatness. Think of Steve Jobs, who built the future in silence, one line of code, one dream, one obsession at a time. These people did not follow the noise. They followed their vision. They didn't wait for permission, they gave it to themselves. They weren't born extraordinary. They became extraordinary through relentless focus, iron discipline, and a burning belief that they could shape their own destiny. While the world doubted, they dreamed. While others talked, they acted. While the crowd sought comfort, they sought growth. The truth is, this greatness is never handed. It's earned. In the darkness of early mornings, in the silence of late nights, in the private battles no one sees. The top 5% of successful people think differently because they've learned the secret most never understand, that your life becomes whatever your mind believes. They have mastered the art of thinking, not aimlessly, not carelessly, but with purpose, precision, and power. Everything starts in the mind. The fortune, the breakthrough, the invention, the empire. All of it begins as a single thought, protected by conviction and watered with persistence. The difference between those who dream and those who achieve is simply the successful think from the end backward. They don't wonder if it's possible. They decide it will be. They live each day as proof of that decision. You see, the greatest people in history didn't just have ideas. They became their ideas. They carried them like fire, protected them from doubt, and fueled them with discipline until the world had no choice but to see what they had seen all along. And you, right now, have that same power. The power to reprogram your thinking, to take control of your mind, to rise above the noise and start thinking like the top 5% of this world. So as you listen to these words, don't just hear them, feel them. Let them remind you of who you were before the world told you to settle. Let them reignite the dream you buried under fear and doubt. Because this is not just another motivational talk. This is your wake-up call. The moment you stop thinking like everyone else, your life will no longer look like everyone else's. Remember this truth: the mind is the workshop of destiny. Whatever you consistently think about, you become. Whatever you believe deeply enough, you create. So guard your thoughts, feed your faith, and direct your focus. Because the moment you decide to think like the top 5%, your entire life begins to transform. This is how legends are made. This is how ordinary minds become extraordinary. And this is how you begin your journey into the top 5%. They think in possibilities, not problems. That's the difference between the top 5% and everyone else. While most people see a wall and stop, the successful mind asks, how can I climb it, go around it, or build a door through it? The way you think determines the life you live. It is not the world that limits you. It is the thoughts you accept about it. The top 5% have learned the art of turning obstacles into opportunities because they refuse to surrender their imagination to fear. They understand that problems are not punishments. They are invitations to grow stronger, smarter, and more capable. When an average person faces failure, they see a reason to quit. But when a successful thinker faces the same failure, they see feedback, a lesson wrapped in difficulty. They don't ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, they ask, what is this trying to teach me? That single shift in thought transforms the entire outcome. The top 5% know that thinking in possibilities is not blind optimism. It's mental strategy. It's choosing to focus on what can be done rather than wasting time on what cannot. It's refusing to dwell on limitations and directing every ounce of mental energy toward creation and solution. When Thomas Edison was asked how he felt after failing thousands of times to create the light bulb, he said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways that didn't work. That's how the top 5% think. They understand that every failure brings them closer to success, that progress is made through persistence, not perfection. They don't waste time complaining about how hard life is. They spend that time figuring out how to make it work for them. They think in terms of action, not excuses. The average mind is quick to declare something impossible because it fears the effort required to achieve it. But the successful mind thrives on challenge. When most people see a dead end, they see direction. When most people see risk, they see reward. They know that every limitation exists only until someone has the courage to think beyond it. The Wright brothers believed humans could fly when the world laughed at them. Elon Musk believed humanity could live on another planet, while most were still struggling to dream beyond Earth. The top 5% are not special. They simply refuse to allow their thoughts to be confined by the beliefs of others. To think in possibilities means to take control of your mental dialogue. The voice inside your head can either be your greatest ally or your deadliest enemy. Most people allow that voice to convince them that they're not ready, not talented, not capable, and they obey it without question. But the successful challenge that voice. They respond with courage, saying, "Maybe I'm not ready yet, but I will be. Maybe I don't know how, but I will learn. Maybe it's hard, but it's not impossible." They train their thoughts the same way a warrior trains his body, with focus, repetition, and discipline. The mind is a powerful tool, but only when you take control of it. Left unchecked, it will magnify fear, doubt, and procrastination. But when directed with purpose, it can turn dreams into reality. The top 5% understand that every creation, every success story, every empire started as a single thought, a possibility that refused to die. They live in a mental space where ideas grow freely because they don't kill them with negativity. They nurture their imagination, feed it with knowledge, and protect it from doubt. When you think in possibilities, you move from victimhood to responsibility. You stop blaming circumstances and start asking, what can I do with what I have right now? That's the question that transforms average lives into extraordinary ones. It's not about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to look for them. Every person who has ever changed history began as an individual who chose to believe something different was possible. Thinking in possibilities also requires faith, not blind faith, but intelligent faith. Faith that says, if I keep going, I'll figure it out. Faith that trusts effort over luck, process over perfection. The top 5% don't wait for guarantees. They move first, trusting that the path will appear as they walk it. They know that hesitation kills opportunity. They would rather fail moving forward than succeed standing still. The greatest enemy of possibility is fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of uncertainty. The top 5% feel that fear too, but they don't obey it. They use it as fuel. They understand that fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal that you're about to grow. So they walk into the unknown with courage, trusting that their ability to think, adapt, and create will carry them through. That's what separates the leaders from the followers, the dreamers from the doers. You see, the top 5% don't spend their mental energy predicting failure. They spend it preparing for success. They expect things to work out. They visualize victory before it happens. They talk about what they're building, not what they're afraid of losing. Their thoughts are seeds of confidence, and every seed they plant grows into something real. The mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, so they use imagination to create the reality they desire. You can start thinking like the top 5% today. You don't need money, power, or connections. You need control of your mind. Every time a negative thought appears, replace it with a possible one. When your mind says, "I can't," respond with, "How can I?" When you face a problem, don't stop at what's wrong. Search for what's right. When you feel stuck, remember that every limitation exists only until you decide to think beyond it. The world is shaped by people who dare to think differently. Everything you admire, every invention, every discovery, every revolution began in someone's mind as a simple possibility. The top 5% think in those terms daily. They ask, what if, and why not? They build their lives around creation, not complaint. And that's why they live where others only dream. Thinking in possibilities is the beginning of transformation. It's the decision to see light where others see darkness, to see progress where others see pain, and to see opportunity where others see defeat. The moment you shift your thoughts, your entire world begins to shift with them. So think boldly, think bravely, think without limit. Because the world you live in tomorrow will always begin with the thoughts you choose today. They master self-discipline over emotion. That is the dividing line between those who dream and those who achieve. Every person feels the same emotions: fear, doubt, laziness, frustration, but only the top 5% have learned not to bow to them. They understand that emotion is temporary, but discipline is power. Discipline is the invisible hand that pushes you forward when everything inside you screams to stop. It's the quiet force that says, do it anyway, even when you don't feel like it. Because the truth is, success does not belong to the most motivated, it belongs to the most disciplined. Emotion will tell you to quit. It will tell you that you're too tired, too late, too far behind. Emotion will convince you that comfort is better than commitment, that rest is better than repetition, and that one skipped day won't matter. But the top 5% know the cost of giving in. They understand that one compromise leads to another, and before long the dream dies in silence. Discipline is their shield against weakness. It's the fire they control when emotions threaten to burn them down. They feel fear, but they move forward anyway. They feel doubt, but they act with confidence. They feel pain, but they still show up. That's what makes them unstoppable. Self-discipline is the purest form of self-respect. It means keeping the promises you make to yourself. It means doing what's necessary, not what's convenient. The top 5% live by the rule that emotion is a visitor, not a master. They don't wait to feel ready. They act first, knowing that action creates emotion. Motivation is fleeting. Discipline is permanent. Motivation depends on mood. Discipline depends on choice. The successful choose to follow through no matter how they feel. Think of the greatest achievers in history. Athletes, inventors, leaders, creators. Their lives were not built on moments of excitement, but on years of consistency. Michael Jordan didn't wake up every day excited to train, but he did it anyway. Steve Jobs didn't feel creative every morning, but he still built. Oprah didn't always feel confident, but she showed up with courage. Discipline carried them through when emotion would have failed them. That's what separates greatness from mediocrity, the ability to keep moving when feelings fade. Emotion is the weather of the mind. It changes constantly. One day you feel powerful, the next you feel lost. One moment you believe in yourself, the next you doubt everything. But discipline is like the sun. It's always there, steady and constant, even when clouds cover it. The top 5% don't rely on good days. They build systems that work even on bad ones. They know that progress is not made in bursts of inspiration. It's made through the grind, through the daily repetition of small actions that compound into extraordinary results. When you master discipline over emotion, you become dangerous, not to others but to your excuses. You become immune to procrastination because you no longer negotiate with your feelings. You stop waiting for the right mood, the right timing, the right conditions. You act regardless. You no longer depend on external motivation because you've built an internal engine that runs on purpose. That is the mindset of the top 5%. They do what needs to be done, not because they feel like it, but because it must be done. Discipline also builds confidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you grow stronger. Every time you follow through, your self-belief multiplies. Confidence doesn't come from success. It comes from discipline. It comes from proving to yourself, day after day, that you can rely on you. That's why the disciplined stand taller. They've earned their confidence through action, not through talk. They don't need to convince anyone of their potential, because their habits already speak louder than their words ever could. Emotion is loud, but discipline is steady. Emotion makes you react, discipline makes you respond. Emotion says, this is hard. Discipline says, do it anyway. Emotion says, no one's watching, so it doesn't matter. Discipline says, I'm watching, and that's what matters. That's the difference between those who want success and those who deserve it. The successful understand that mastery over self is the highest form of power. Because once you can command yourself, there is nothing external that can control you. The top 5% don't eliminate emotion. They channel it. They use pain as fuel, fear as awareness, and doubt as motivation. They've learned that emotion is energy, and energy can be directed. When they feel anger, they work harder. When they feel fear, they prepare deeper. When they feel tired, they remember why they started. They've trained their emotions to serve their purpose instead of sabotage it. You cannot rise above the world until you rise above yourself. And that battle is fought daily. In the early mornings, when the alarm rings, in the late nights, when the work feels endless, in those quiet moments when no one would know if you quit. That's where discipline is born. It's forged in discomfort, refined in routine, and strengthened by repetition. The top 5% have simply learned to fall in love with consistency. They don't need to enjoy every moment of the process. They respect it. They know the process is the price of greatness, and they pay it willingly. If you rely on emotion, you will live an inconsistent life, starting strong and fading fast. But if you build on discipline, you'll rise steadily, unshaken by mood or circumstance. Discipline gives you freedom, the freedom to act regardless of fear, to persist regardless of fatigue, and to endure regardless of difficulty. The top 5% understand this truth. Freedom is not the absence of rules, it's the ability to rule yourself. You can have the best vision in the world, but without discipline, it dies as a fantasy. Vision gives direction, but discipline gives motion. It's easy to dream when you're inspired. It's harder to act when you're tired. But that's exactly where winners are made. When the average person stops, the disciplined keep going. They've trained themselves to act without permission from their feelings. Every great transformation begins the moment you stop letting emotion dictate your destiny. Don't let feelings decide your future. Feelings are fickle, purpose is permanent. Learn to act with intention, not impulse. Build the habit of doing hard things, especially when you don't feel like it. Because every time you do, you strengthen the muscle that separates the top 5% from the rest of the world, the muscle of discipline. So, when your mind whispers that you're tired, tell it that you're trained. When your emotions tell you to quit, remind yourself that you've come too far to stop now. Because discipline is not a punishment, it's a promise. A promise to your potential, to your future, to the best version of you. And once you master self-discipline over emotion, nothing can stop you. Not doubt, not failure, not fear. You will rise every time, not because it's easy, but because you've trained yourself to. The world belongs to those who act, not to those who wait for the right feeling. Be one of the few. Be disciplined enough to win. They focus on growth, not comparison. That is the quiet power that separates the truly successful from those endlessly chasing validation. The top 5% of people do not measure their worth by the shadows of others. They measure it by the distance they've traveled from who they used to be. They don't waste their mental energy watching the scoreboard of someone else's life. They use that energy to refine their own craft, their own purpose, their own evolution. They understand that comparison is a thief, a silent destroyer of joy, clarity, and progress. Growth, on the other hand, is creation. It's expansion, it's life itself. The top 5% live for progress, not applause. They wake up not to outshine others, but to outgrow themselves. Comparison is poison to the mind. It convinces you that you're behind when, in truth, you're on your own timeline. It blinds you to your blessings because you're too busy counting someone else's. The majority of people waste years trying to match a version of success that isn't even meant for them. They chase after another's path, forgetting that they have their own unique race to run. But the top 5%, they refuse that trap. They understand that their only competition is the person they were yesterday. They compare their effort, not their results, because results are the byproduct of consistent effort over time. They've mastered the art of focusing inward, knowing that true success is never external, it's internal. Growth is not glamorous. It's not loud or attention-seeking. It's silent work in the shadows, learning and learning, improving, failing, trying again. It's late nights, quiet mornings, and a relentless commitment to getting better even when no one notices. The top 5% don't need validation. They need progress. They understand that the tree doesn't compete with the flower. It simply grows, deeply rooted and patiently strong. That's the essence of real success, a steady, personal expansion that does not depend on comparison. When you focus on growth, you stop living from ego and start living from purpose. Ego wants recognition, but purpose wants improvement. Ego looks around, purpose looks ahead. The top 5% understand that every person they admire once started where they are now, unsure, unpolished, unrecognized. But they didn't waste time envying others. They used that time to grow into someone worthy of admiration. They know that comparison distracts while growth directs, so they choose direction over distraction. To grow is to honor your potential. It's to say, I will not stay the same when I know I can be more. Growth requires humility, because it demands that you acknowledge there's room to improve. It requires patience, because progress rarely happens overnight. It requires courage, because you must face your weaknesses without running from them. The top 5% embrace that discomfort. They understand that growth often feels like breaking habits, breaking limitations, breaking old identities. But that breaking is the birth of something greater. They welcome it, because they know that staying the same is far more painful than the struggle of transformation. Comparison kills individuality. It makes you chase another's dream instead of building your own. The successful refuse to measure themselves by external metrics. They define success on their own terms: peace, mastery, purpose, fulfillment. They don't care if someone has more followers, more money, or more recognition. They care about becoming sharper, wiser, stronger than they were yesterday. That's the mindset of the top 5%, a quiet focus on continuous self-evolution. Growth demands consistency. It's the small habits repeated daily that shape greatness. It's reading when others scroll, learning when others gossip, building when others sleep. The top 5% don't chase shortcuts because they know shortcuts cut away character. They understand that slow progress is still progress. They don't seek to be the best immediately. They seek to be better endlessly. They don't need to prove their worth, they improve their worth. Every time you compare yourself to someone else, you drain energy that could have been used to create your own greatness. The top 5% channel that energy inward. They look at successful people not with envy but with curiosity. What can I learn from them? What habits, what mindset? What discipline brought them here? They don't compete with others. They study them, and then they apply those lessons to their own journey. That's how they grow exponentially, by transforming admiration into application. When you live for growth, every setback becomes a lesson, every failure becomes feedback, and every delay becomes development. The top 5% have learned that growth never wastes pain. They use every experience, even the painful ones, as fuel to evolve. They know that life doesn't give them what they want. It gives them what they need to grow. So instead of complaining, they adapt. Instead of comparing, they improve. Instead of wishing, they work. Comparison leads to frustration, but growth leads to fulfillment. Because when you grow, you realize that success is not about being better than others. It's about being better for others. The top 5% grow so they can serve more, lead more, inspire more. Their growth uplifts the world around them. They've learned that real success is not a race. It's a ripple effect. The more you grow, the more light you give off, and the more people you empower. The truth is, the moment you stop comparing, you free yourself. You stop living for approval and start living for purpose. You stop competing for attention and start competing for excellence. You stop chasing trends and start creating legacy. The top 5% don't want to be known. They want to be valuable. They don't want to be seen as great. They want to become great. And greatness, they know, is not achieved through comparison but through consistent growth. Growth is silent victory. It's the unseen effort that builds the unshakable foundation of greatness. It's the long hours no one claps for, the sacrifices no one notices, the persistence that never gets praised. But one day, those who chose growth stand taller, not because they wanted to outshine anyone, but because they've become solid, grounded, unbreakable. So stop looking around. Look within. The only person you're meant to surpass is the one you were yesterday. Let every day be a competition with your past self. Learn more. Work smarter. Grow stronger. Don't chase recognition, chase refinement. Because when you focus on growth, success can't help but find you. Remember this truth: comparison drains. Growth builds. One keeps you stuck, the other sets you free. The top 5% didn't become extraordinary by being better than everyone else. They became extraordinary by being relentless about becoming better than they were. So, shift your focus. Don't ask, who's ahead of me? Ask, how can I grow from here? That single change in mindset is the doorway to limitless progress. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs your evolution. Grow so much that the only competition left is the reflection in your mirror. Grow so deeply that comparison becomes meaningless. Because in the end, success doesn't belong to those who compare. It belongs to those who grow. They guard their mind relentlessly. The top 5% understand that the mind is the most powerful instrument in the universe, and the most dangerous when left unguarded. They know that everything in life is created twice. First in the mind and then in reality. Every invention, every empire, every success story began as a single thought that was protected, nurtured, and strengthened against doubt, fear, and negativity. The top 5% do not allow their minds to be playgrounds for random thoughts or toxic influences. They guard it like a sacred temple, because they know that what enters the mind eventually builds their future. Most people treat their mind carelessly. They consume anything: gossip, fear, negativity, noise. They allow others to plant seeds of doubt, envy, and worry. And then they wonder why they can't grow peace, power, or purpose. But the top 5% think differently. They are the gatekeepers of their mental world. They choose what to feed their minds just as carefully as an athlete chooses what to feed their body. They understand that if the input is weak, the output will be weak. If the mind is poisoned, the life will reflect that poison. So they feed their minds with clarity, wisdom, and vision. They are selective about the information they consume, the conversations they entertain, and the people they keep close. They know that the environment is contagious. Spend time around complainers, and soon you'll complain. Surround yourself with dreamers, and soon you'll start to dream. The top 5% choose their environment intentionally, because they understand that their surroundings shape their state of mind. They build mental armor against the constant bombardment of negativity that floods this world. They stay away from drama, gossip, and distractions, because they know that energy wasted on nonsense is energy stolen from greatness. Guarding the mind means mastering awareness. It means noticing when your thoughts begin to drift toward doubt or fear, and taking control before they take root. The average person lets thoughts control them. The top 5% control their thoughts. They are not slaves to mental chatter. They are the architects of it. They practice the art of replacing every negative thought with a powerful one. When fear whispers, "You can't," they respond with, "Watch me." When doubt says, "You're not ready," they reply, "I will prepare until I am." They've trained their inner dialogue to work for them, not against them. They also know that the mind becomes what it repeatedly consumes. That's why they immerse themselves in growth. Books that expand their thinking, mentors who challenge them, environments that elevate their perspective. They don't waste mental energy on things they can't control. Instead, they focus it on building what they can. While most people are distracted by noise, the top 5% are absorbed in purpose. They've learned to silence the chaos of the outside world so they can hear the wisdom within. The mind is like a garden. Left unattended, weeds grow. Negativity, fear, procrastination, they creep in quietly and multiply fast. But the top 5% are gardeners of their thoughts. Every day, they pull out weeds before they choke the seeds of success. They plant affirmations, discipline, and gratitude. They know that a strong mind doesn't happen by accident. It's cultivated through daily effort, through conscious focus. They treat their thoughts like gold, polishing them until they reflect greatness. Guarding the mind also means refusing to be ruled by opinion. The top 5% are immune to the noise of judgment. They don't live for approval because they know opinions change like the wind. But truth remains. They have learned to think independently, to hold their vision firm even when others can't see it. They understand that the world will often call their ideas crazy, until those same ideas become the standard of success. They don't waste time explaining their vision to small minds. They protect it, nurture it, and let results speak louder than defense. A guarded mind is a powerful weapon. It can endure storms, resist manipulation, and remain calm when everything around it falls apart. The top 5% don't allow fear-based media, toxic people, or self-doubt to rent space in their minds. They filter everything through one question: does this strengthen me or weaken me? If it weakens them, they reject it. They understand that mental clutter is the enemy of clarity, and clarity is the foundation of success. When your mind is unguarded, the world programs it for you, to think small, to settle, to fear failure. But when your mind is guarded, you program it yourself, to think big, to take action, to pursue greatness. The top 5% live by the law of mental discipline. Control your thoughts, and you control your destiny. They take time each day to feed their minds positive energy, through reflection, learning, visualization, and gratitude. They don't start their mornings with chaos. They start with intention. Because the first thoughts of the day set the tone for the rest of it. They understand that life is not about avoiding problems but managing perspective. A weak mind collapses under difficulty, but a strong one finds solutions. That strength comes from consistent mental training. Just like muscles grow under resistance, the mind grows under challenge. The top 5% welcome difficulty because they know it sharpens their thinking. Every problem they solve builds mental fortitude. Every setback becomes another layer of strength. Guarding your mind doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means choosing how to interpret it. The top 5% don't deny the existence of struggle. They simply refuse to give it power. They've learned that the mind amplifies what it focuses on. Focus on fear and fear grows. Focus on faith and faith multiplies. They've learned to direct their mental lens toward growth, opportunity, and gratitude. Because what you focus on, you attract more of. And when life tests them, when doubt tries to creep in, when failures stack up, when critics get loud, they retreat into their fortress of mental strength. They remember who they are, what they stand for, and why they began. That clarity protects them. It allows them to keep moving while others freeze, to keep believing while others break. Their mind becomes an unshakable foundation upon which they can build anything. So, guard your mind like your life depends on it, because it does. Your thoughts shape your words shape your actions, and your actions shape your destiny. Don't let just anything enter the sacred space of your mind. Protect it from negativity, feed it with purpose, and train it with discipline. Because once your mind is fortified, no storm can destroy you. The world may try to shake you, but it will never move you. The top 5% are not superhuman. They've simply learned this universal truth: what you allow in your mind determines what you create in your life. So protect it, nurture it, strengthen it. Because the most valuable real estate you will ever own is not your home, not your business, not your bank account. It's your mind. And once you control that, you control everything. There's a rare kind of person who doesn't talk much, but the whole world ends up talking about them. They move in silence, yet their impact echoes for generations. These are the thinkers, the visionaries, the quiet giants who understand that power doesn't come from noise. It comes from clarity of mind and consistency of purpose. Think of Elon Musk, a man once laughed at for dreaming of Mars, now shaping the future of humanity. Think of Oprah Winfrey, a woman who turned rejection, poverty, and pain into a global empire of inspiration. Think of Steve Jobs, who worked alone in a garage while the world ignored him, but later changed how that same world connects, creates, and dreams. Think of Albert Einstein, a man who was told he wouldn't amount to anything, yet whose thoughts rewrote the laws of the universe. These people didn't shout about success. They built it step by step in the silence of focus, discipline, and vision. Because here's the truth. Success doesn't happen in noise. It doesn't happen when you're busy impressing others or fighting for attention. It happens in the quiet hours when no one is watching. It happens when you stay committed long after excitement fades. The top 5% of the world's achievers have one thing in common. They've mastered their thoughts before they mastered their lives. They understand that everything begins in the mind. Every fortune, every idea, every revolution. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary isn't talent, it's mindset. The greatest minds of history weren't born different. They simply thought differently. They refused to think like the crowd. They dared to imagine beyond the limits of logic. When others saw the impossible, they saw a path. When others doubted, they decided. When others hesitated, they acted. And that's what separates the top 5% from the rest of the world. Not luck, not privilege, not intelligence, but the way they think. Their thoughts are disciplined, directed, and determined. They don't waste mental energy comparing, complaining, or competing. They think in terms of growth, of vision, of creation. They think like builders of worlds, not victims of circumstance. Today you will learn to think like them. Not someday, not eventually, but now. Because the moment you change the way you think, your life begins to change before your eyes. This is not a speech about success. It's a mirror. A mirror that shows you what you could become if you decide to control your mind, your focus, and your destiny. So as you listen, I want you to remember this. Every great empire began as a single thought. Every breakthrough, every transformation, every dream that changed the world started in silence, inside the mind of someone who refused to think small. This is how the top 5% think. This is how the extraordinary rise. And this is where your transformation begins.